All right, with that, I think that's all for the news. So let's dive into today's chapter, which is a doozy. One of the most important chapters and probably most talked about chapters in all of A Song of Ice and Fire. This is the sort of Ghost of High Heart chapter. So the outlaws first visit Lord Lyman Leicester, and then the Lady of Leaves in search of word on Lord Beric Dondarrion's whereabouts, but none have seen him, only hearing rumors that he was dead, hanged once, killed by Vargo Hoat, Armory Lorch, and twice by Gregor Clegane. Arya heard similar rumors at Harrenhal, but Lem and Tom know that Beric is still alive. The outlaws plan to ransom Arya at River Run. After they meet up with Beric and Thoros of Myr, they arrive at High Heart, an ancient hill sacred to the children of the forest. 31 mighty weirwoods had stood atop the hill, but only their stumps remained after the Andals chopped them down. Arya can feel the power of the place. An old dwarf woman speaks in private to Lem, Tom, and Greenbeard. But Arya overhears the conversation. The woman has dreams while sleeping among the weirwood stumps and tells them she had dreamed of a shadow with a burning heart killing a golden stag, a man without a face waiting on a swayed bridge. On his shoulder perched a drowned crow with seaweed hanging from its wings, and of a raging river and a woman that was a fish, dead with red tears on her cheeks. But when her eyes did open, I woke from terror. Then at Acorn Hall, Lady Smallwood informs them that Thoros had been through recently and that the Karstark men were searching for the Kingslayer. Arya and Gendry go off to the smithy, and the former apprentice explains that Thoros was a charlatan using regular swords, and wildfire to make his flaming sword. After getting in a playful fight with Gendry, Arya tears a dress given to her by Lady Smallwood. As the Brotherhood is getting ready to leave, Lady Smallwood gives Arya clothes that had belonged to her now deceased son. Embarrassed by her action, Arya apologizes to Lady Smallwood before leaving.
Yeah, I really like the scene at the end of this chapter. I think it does a lot for Arya because Arya can sometimes be a little bullheaded and make rash decisions and be kind of rude to people that maybe don't deserve it. I think sometimes she even acts a little bit noble born, even though she doesn't realize it. And I think that this is a nice sentimental moment. One, it's an act of kindness, which are few and far between in this land, especially right now during the war. But it's also time for Arya to reflect that she's not the only person that has lost people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. And like you said, and on that real quick, I know that this chapter often does just talk about the ghost of High Heart, but like you said, there is actually a lot of other substance in this chapter outside of that. So I think actually maybe we should just go ahead and start with the ghost of High Heart stuff,
Yeah.
because that's the main thing everyone wants, and then we can talk about it afterwards. So this is probably one of the most biggest sort of prophetic chapters in all of A Song of Ice and Fire. I'd put it right up there with Brand 3 and any of the
House of
stuff
the
with
Undying.
Dany. Exactly. So, remember, this is a reread, so we still have to think about where we're at currently. So some of these things have happened. Some, if you're reading this for the first time, or watching or whatever, hasn't happened yet. Right. Or, any of the patch face stuff you can put up there too. So here we go. She says, besides the embers of their, I'll pull it up on the screen here too. One second. Let me add this to the screen. Okay. So beside the embers of their campfire, she saw Tom, Lemon, and Greenbeard talking to a tiny little woman a foot shorter than Arya and older than old Nan. So that in our first thing should tell us, right, that this woman is crazy old, right?
Yes.
Because I would say that old Nan is probably, at least the way she is described, appears to be probably as old as like Maester Aemon.
Yeah, or Walter Frey, like that old.
Right. That, yeah, certainly that, like, that's the description we get. I mean, Ned Starks talks about old Nan. He talks about like she was here for some Brandon that wasn't my brother. So it's like a Brandon, before and before. So the ghost of High Heart could be like 150.
Which is crazy to think about. I think she's even older, personally.
She could be.
I think she's a children of the forest, a child of the forest.
Well, maybe, and that's why they look like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they call her a woods witch, and they just don't know exactly what it is. And
Yeah, and it comes from the A Dance of Dragons. Barristan and Danny have this conversation, and he's talking all about Jaehaerys II and the arranged marriage, and then they end up talking about Jenny Voldstones, which Jenny Voldstones has this friend who everyone calls a dwarf, but Jenny Voldstones claims she was one of the children of the forest, and a lot of people think that that person died at the tragedy of Summerhall, but we see her right here, right now.
Right. Okay. So Jenny Voldstone says that. I thought Jenny Voldstone said she was a descendant of the Children of the Forest.
Well, it might be the fact of a descendant. I might be recalling it incorrectly. But even if she's a descendant, it would make a lot of sense if you think about it. All these chopped down werewoods, and she wants to stay around them, kind of connected to that network, even though they've been chopped down. You know what I mean? And having these dreams that have like kind of pieced together visions, not full blown knowledge.
Hold on.
I think all of it's really important.
Keep going for a second. I need to pull something up here, because what you said might have just like blown my mind here.
Well, Jenny Voldstones is one of those things, and this is one of the things that I love about George's writing, is that Jenny Voldstones could very much be like a throwaway line to make you feel like you're in the world. No, we have Jenny Voldstone's legend and a song and la 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 la. When in reality, it actually is 3 degrees away from major events such as the tragedy of Summerhall, which we know connects to the Duncan Egg story, which also might connect back to Aegon's prophecy. So this little thing that could be just a dash of world building or a random song actually has a lot of ties to the central plot, and it will never be on the nose acknowledged by George, but it'll just be subtly there for us to catch on reread.
Okay, no, you're okay. No, you're correct. She does believe her to be a
Children of the Forest.
A Children of the Forest. Because I was thinking, hold on a second, a descendant of the Children of the Forest.
A child.
Well, I don't know
how you say it.
The thing I was thinking about, I was like, hold on a second. For her to be a descendant of the Children of the Forest, that means that the Children of the Forest at some point could have breeded with humans. And I was like, that would totally explain Green Dreams to me, because that would like explain that bloodline. But I don't know that they can. Because remember, if you think back to, we read it, if you go back to the World of Ice and Fire, when it talks about the Dawn Age, it is, I'll grab the book.
It's a big hand wave.
Well, it is, but it also is real weird because they talk about like these green seers.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that it cuts like immediately to it, it's confusing to sort of read it, because you're like, well, hold on a second. Are these green seers children of the forest? Are these green seers were just people? Like,
yes.
It's like, are the children and the green seers connected? Because in theory, it's like, okay, I could see that. I could see how, like, but it's never explained if like they do get green sight by being somewhat connected to the children of the forest, who seem like they're the ones that can use the weirwoods and everything, which is also the same thing that the green seers can't. So,
and a lot of the green seers are in the north, who were there around the children of the forest between the first men, right? So we're talking about people who are geographically closer to the children of the forest than the people from, like, let's say, Dorne. Now we can get into another whole thing. Is green seeing the same as dragon dreams? We're not really sure. I think dragon dreams are kind of their own thing, but I think you're onto something. And remember, me and you have actually talked about what if a white and a human got together, and that explains some of the oddities that we see in people that belong up in the north. And I'm under the impression that the whites have their own culture, and that they are not like it's not going to come down to a us versus them, but coming to an understanding of who the others actually are. And the children of the forest have been around, and we know they existed. So for them to, get it on, for lack of a better term, and have some offspring that could create something like this is definitely feasible in this universe.
Yeah, and now I had to go grab the book here, because now I'm thinking about something totally different here. Because, okay, so it says in the book, right? And when it talks about the green men, right? So it says, whether the green men still survive on their isle, talking about the Isle of Faces, is not clear, although there are occasional accounts of some foolhardy young river lord taking a boat there, right? So if you look at the picture that it has here, I don't know if my camera can pull it up. If I was on my other computer, I could
yeah, you can see it.
You can see it. Okay. I guess I should probably switch over here to this. Actually, I do have it on this computer, I think, maybe. So if you look at this picture, it's kind of with the lighting. You can't see it.
Yeah, and for the audio people, it's a picture of those river lords coming up and meeting
Right.
the
It's on page 8 of A World of Ice and Fire. So, but yeah, you see these people going up and talking to these people. They kind of look like dwarfs, not like dwarfs, but like almost like halflings, I guess, like hobbits. I get right. You know what I mean? Like they look, they look like small humans. I'm wondering, Jimmy, is it possible that the children of the forest did breed at some point with humans and they were able to create this half race, and that might explain where the power of the green sight came from, in terms of, because it's like, how do some humans, because like the Andals and the First Men are just humans. They're different, like,
Yes.
groups of humans. Like you would have like Europeans versus, South people from South America going into North America, as opposed to like, different like races, like, different like
Yeah.
human, like, giants are different than humans, what I mean? Like, so I'm wondering if there's anything, because we've heard a lot of people talk about like breeding with giants.
Yeah, because Tormund. I mean, Tormund is supposed to be part of that, right?
Right, but we see some of the other people, they talk about like humans that might have some giant's blood in them. They might just be saying it because they're really tall and it's like a legend or something. But a
Right.
lot of legends come from myth, which comes from facts, somehow. So if the children were able to actually breed with these like humans or something like that at some point, something like that, that might explain the green sight. So Jenny's saying that she is a children of the forest. If she were actually a child of the forest, I mean, when we see Leaf, she looks it's like pretty obvious she's not human.
Yeah, I would say I've never met a human that looks like that, except for, Danny DeVito.
Right. So, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, I guess you know what I'm saying. So it seems
Yeah.
like maybe she's like an offshoot of that or something, which could explain like where that power of green sight comes from,
Yeah,
because she obviously has it.
and the ghost of Highheart is also described as a dwarf, because there's rumors that Tyrion, after he flees after his father's death, has went and become kind of like a hobbled dwarf that's in a haunted forest on a haunted hill or some madness. So there's a lot of attention thrown around by George about her stature and then where she has come from. But she has an extremely long life. I would say a damn near unnaturally long life for a human being. And that's where I think it's interesting. And she happens to just be housed around these 31 werewoods that have been cut down. They're stumps.
Yeah. So I'll put this away. So I mean, maybe she is actually a children of the forest, and they just think she's like some super super old woman. But even the way she's described doesn't seem like the children we've seen. Because Leaf, seems like a kind of like young athletic girl,
Yeah.
right? So, and she might be, and she's at least old enough to know or have been present when like the White Walkers were there. That seems different than what this woman is.
Yes, this woman is also pretty far south, right? Like
Right.
this isn't up near the wall or even near Winterfell at this point. So children of the forest in this day and age, or even in the last 500 years in Westeros, being this south, I don't think so. I think maybe being a descendant or being a quarter of children of the forest, child of the forest. I don't know how we're supposed to say that, folks. So I'm sorry I keep bumbling over those words, but
Yeah, if somebody you're describing, they are
it's like the
of the
title is
children of the forest.
yes, that's like what the people of them are called. So I don't know. We'll say child of the forest. Uh, I think that this could have legs.
Yeah, see, I'm looking at Maggie of the Frog here too, because she's somebody who's kind of some. Now in the show they cast what's her name? She's in The Witcher, where she's like the queen in The Witcher. So they did not go the direction that she is described in the books, which is sort of similar to the Ghost of Iheart. A squat, warty, crusted, yellow-eyed woman with no teeth and pale green jowls. Right? I mean, which is totally, sort of different. But like when you think about like the Chronic Men and like like the frogs, I mean, Howland Reed we know goes to the Isle of Faces where are there still green men there? I mean, frogs are green. Are they like the same thing? I mean, he goes there and trains.
And what does that mean? Like train in what?
Exactly.
Is he doing a keto over there? Like,
So
what are we doing?
yeah, he's doing kettlebell swings over there, but he learns chronic man magic, right? Which could just be like green dreams, because we know Jojen has it.
Is there a chance that Howland Reed is the liver king of Westeros?
He might be a child of the forest descendant, or the sort of offshoot, or maybe
I
that's
love
what
the idea. I
the
love the
green men
idea.
are.
Yeah, I think
So anyway,
this is very cool.
so what it could do is it could explain some of the stuff about Maggie the Frog, and I'll get or old Nan, old Nan, all of them. Jeez, Christmas is sending me in all sorts of places here. The ghost of High Heart, right? So all stooped and wrinkled and leaning on her gnarled black cane, her hair was white, and her white hair was so long it came almost to the ground. When the wind gusted, it blew about her head in a fine cloud. Her flesh was whiter than the color of milk, and it seemed to Arya that her eyes were red, though it was hard to tell from the bushes. The old gods stir and will not let me sleep, she heard the woman say. I dreamt I saw a shadow with a burning heart butchering a golden stag. I dreamt of a man without a face waiting on a bridge that swayed and swung. On his shoulder perched a drowned crow with seaweed hanging from his wings. I dreamt of a roaring river and a woman that was a fish. Dead she drifted with red tears on her cheeks. But when her eyes did open, oh, I woke from terror. All this I dreamt and more. Do you have gifts for me to pay for my dreams? So right now, some of these things haven't happened yet.
Yes.
I dreamt I saw a shadow with a burning heart butchering a golden stag. Okay, seen that. Renly. I dreamt of a man without a face waiting on a bridge that swayed and swung. On his shoulder perched a drowned crow with seaweed hanging from his wings. Haven't seen that yet. Euron and Balon. Yes. I dreamt of a roaring river with a woman that was a fish. Dead she drifted with red tears on her cheeks. But when her eyes did open, oh, I woke from terror. That's the Red Wedding. And again, because we're reading this, chapter by chapter, man, the Red Wedding is mentioned, hinted at in like every chapter of the past like 6 chapters.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it seems so obvious here. But it's even more so than just a Red Wedding. It's actually very similar, or not similar, but it's exactly how Catelyn will be found. Yeah. And then breathed life into by Beric Dondarrion, which is interesting because this chapter is coupled with the rumor that Beric Dondarrion again is somewhat of a living legend, or an unliving legend in some ways. So these things are tightly coupled, and we know that Beric is going to give her the breath of life.
Yeah. And I'm going to pull up, see if I can get it pulled up here too. Patchface, his prophecy comes up at the beginning of Clash of Kings. Am I correct in that? Right?
Yes.
Isn't it the opening where his comes? So and then a lot of that stuff doesn't happen until like way later in the in the book. Here, some of this stuff we're gonna see. I don't think the Balon Greyjoy thing happened. It doesn't happen for a while.
Well, in the show, they push it back way further. Balon, I don't remember exactly when the Balon stuff happens. I want to say it might be at the end of this book.
I think so.
I'm pretty sure, or maybe it's whenever all of the whenever everything goes down with the King's Moot. So that could be later on. I can't remember exactly where it is in the books.
Yeah, I don't think Balon Greyjoy dies at the end. Yeah, Balon Greyjoy dies like Davos chapter 54. So we're about halfway there in this book. So it's still a while. Yeah. Because this is interesting, I will say, because most of the prophecies have come at the beginning of books. This one, I mean, this is a big book, so it's still like in the first third, but most of them come within like the first couple chapters. This is a little more towards the middle.
Yeah. And kind of reverbs, right? In some ways, where we've seen the beginning of the Red Wedding be foreshadowed, right? Where the Freys are leaving Harrenhal back all the way back in Clash of Kings, and that is the beginning of the rumblings. But the very end point is when Catelyn Stark gets pulled out of that river, and then this is the first time that we've had something in the aftermath be predicted, even further in the future. It also makes you wonder that if certain things have to happen, like there's some sort of think about this, there's some sort of conscious awareness about the werewoods or the old gods to where certain decisions have to be made for them to then predict these events, right? So maybe the reason why this is being spoken now is because of a lot of the stuff that's just happened in previous chapters.
Yeah.
You see what I'm
Agreed.
saying? Like if Rob had done differently, maybe the Ghost of Ironheart has a totally different
Sorry.
yeah, different story, dreams.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and in that way, you can kind of play with the fact that there might still be free will within this universe. And also, by the way, a lot of the prophecies end up being mountains out of molehills, like Sansa's giant and Winterfell prophecy, which we end up seeing is just Robin knocking over her snow castle. So, this is one of the times that this is spot on, and there's something special here.
You know what else is we're also in this. I went back and looked a few chapters. This is, if you think about like stretches of things, like we're talking about the Red Wedding is hinted at more and more and more. This stretch right here, because the next chapter is a Daenerys chapter where Jorah talks a little bit about like Rhaegar, Targaryen.
Yeah.
This stretch is like a pretty heavy stretch of magic. So just going back just a few chapters, we have Samwell 1, right? Where Sam kills a White Walker. Kills a White Walker. Then we have Tyrion 3. Not really a whole lot of magic in that. That's actually pretty, political.
No, but we get the council where his father is extremely confident that we're going to be fine. Yeah, I mean he's hinting towards it.
So then we get to a Catelyn chapter, and remember in that chapter, Catelyn, that's like when Rob comes back, right? And she's talking about like keep your wolf close, man. So a little more kind of magic there. Then Jaime, not a lot. That last Arya chapter, this is where we're talking about the Brotherhood Without Banners and stuff like that. And then, this is the chapter we're in. Obviously, it goes to High Heart too. And then we get to that Daenerys chapter. So a lot of magic is going on in this sort of stretch here, which is also kind of interesting because here we go, green dreams and stuff like that. This might be the most magical book, Storm of Swords.
Yeah, I think that George does a really nice job of gradually escalating the magic because this is a world that magic had left. And then a red comet happens and magic re-enters the world. At least that's what we're being told at this point. And things are moving. The winter is coming, as the Starks will say, right? And George does a fantastic job of introducing these elements and making us doubt, and definitely making the characters in the story doubt as well. I will say, I think one of the biggest magical moments other than just Lady Stoneheart, which comes at the end of this book, is Renly being murdered by a shadow assassin. I think that is wild. And then also one that kind of gets forgotten about though is Mance Rayder and Rattleshirt or whatever his name is.
Glamour.
The Glamour. That's man, Melisandre is legit. She is part of two of the biggest magical moments. And I know there's plenty of other ones, folks. I'm just naming some off the top of my head. But
yeah, I mean, once Arya joins the Faceless Man, like that's obviously pretty big.
Yeah, and honestly, I would actually say Dance with Dragons is the most magical book because you get all the brand stuff. You get Jojen paste.
Yeah, I mean, we just killed a White Walker with Dragon Glass, though. That's pretty magical.
Tight. Children of Forest go up in book 5. There's a lot.
There's a lot. I do love how immediately too, and of course we totally glance over this line, but remember, if you're reading this for the first time, so Lemoncloak immediately dreams. What good are dreams? Fish woman and drowned crows. I had a dream myself last night. I was kissing the tavern wench I used to know. Are you going to pay me for that? So I love how immediately George has somebody who, like we see so often with so many other things that include magic, which is the skeptics, right? Oh, Grumpkins and Snarks up there at the wall.
Yes.
right? Dire wolves south, that's you're just making that up.
Imagine.
Krakens, dragons, whatever, like, but immediately he comes in with this line right here to like undercut it and say, yeah, whatever.
Which is the general attitude in Westeros at this point about magic and things of that nature, any of the fantastical elements. And we saw that, like you said, with the Krakens, whenever we just saw the Tywin small council scene.
Yeah.
And it plays into the entire theme of this massive threat in the north that's coming that nobody really wants to acknowledge. And it's because magic's been dead for so long.
Yeah. I I
When
just
Daenerys arrives on this continent, it is literally going to be whiplash for these people.
Right. I just love the way George words it here, because immediately he shows us in this woman's prophecy. Because here we are, we're jumping into this new chapter, and like two pages in, we're introduced to some woman, and some super old brand new character who now we've not know not more about her, and we're like, okay, she's pretty legit. But this old woman who's so old, she seems older than old Dan. So it's like, but the first thing she says is, I saw a shadow with a burning heart butchering a golden stag. So if you're a first time reader, you're like, well, I know what that is, right?
Well, I hope
But
they would catch it.
right, yeah. But then she talks about things that haven't happened yet. So you'd be like, okay, I don't know what she's talking about. But so just narratively, this prophecy is also like, I love to point out George's writing anytime I get the opportunity to, because we spend so much time talking about other things. It's great. It's excellent. And then undercutting it, it's so good.
Yeah, he has a great idea of like what the atmosphere is, not just in scene setting, but I mean like kind of the cultural atmosphere of people and what their beliefs are at this moment. And he plays a lot with disbelief and skepticism. I can't talk.
Mhm.
Anyways, he plays with that a lot, and he plays with it from our perspective as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really talented how he puts it all together.
So just a little bit before that, I want to talk about this here too. So this High Heart had been sacred to the children of the forest, Tom Seven Strings told her, and some of their magic lingered here still. No harm can come to those who sleep here, the singer said. Arya thought that this must be true. The hill was so high and the surrounding lands so flat that no enemy could approach unseen. The small folk hereabouts shunned the place, Tom told her. It was said to be haunted by the ghosts of the children of the forest who had died here when the Andal king named Erig the Kingslayer had cut down their grove. Arya knew about the children of the forest and about the Andals too, but ghosts did not frighten her. She used to hide in the crypts of Winterfell when she was little and play games of come into my castle and monsters and maidens amongst the stone kings on their thrones.
The crypt, once again mentioned in a fantastical chapter. What could be happening down there? I wonder.
Something. The crypts of Winterfell are going to play some thing. They did tease it in season 8, where like, where like maybe the skeletons were going to come out when they raised all the dead and everything like that. And then maybe that could be something where it's like, oh no, now Arya is down there and she is scared or something. But I think it's going to be more of like a secret or something that they uncover, and it's
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, the crypts are
gonna lead
significant.
to something.
Yeah, they're significant in the books.
Yeah. So the next morning, the little white woman was nowhere to be seen. The singer chuckled. Saw her, did you? Was she a ghost? Do ghosts complain about how their joints creak? No, she's only an old dwarf woman, a queer one though, and evil-eyed. But she knows things she has no business of knowing, and sometimes she'll tell you if she likes the look of you. Did she like the looks of you? Ari asked doubtfully. The singer laughed. The sound of me, at least. She always makes me sing the same bloody song, though. Not a bad song, mind you, but I know others just as good. And then they don't actually go into what that song is currently. Um, but he does talk about like the fact that she's evil-eyed, and I love how they talk about when they're describing her eye color. Well, it's because of the trees and things like that might make it seem red, because eye color is such an important thing in A Song of Ice and Fire. Like with young Griff, are his eyes actually blue? Or is his eyes purple? It might be because of his hair causes us to look at him a certain way. So I love how here as well, George is even like throwing people off of his own, theories and things that he's obviously put in, by putting that line in too, to cause us to be like, well, maybe it's not, maybe it is specifically just how we're looking at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get it from all different perspectives as well. And a lot of times he kind of treats situations in these books not like a timeline where you go to point A to point B, but a spiral around the event, right? Like even the Red Wedding, think about it. Like when it happens, we see it from or from Catelyn's perspective, and then we see Arya. But then we hear people talk about in the later books, and it's never really like we'll hear about different points in different times. Is my point that I'm trying to make. And I think that that leads to a really interesting way of thinking about events narratively, like in the actual story.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. So this chapter it continues on too, right? So right after that, do the ghost sing or do the song and things like that. Tom Seven Strings rolled his eyes at that, but Harwin gave her an answer. I wouldn't call it hiding, my lady, but it's true. Lord Beric moves about a lot and seldom lets on what his plans are. That way, no one can betray him. By now, there must be hundreds of us sworn to him, maybe thousands, but it wouldn't do us all to trail along behind him. We'd eat the country bare or get butchered in a battle by some bigger host. The way we're scattered in little bands, we can strike in a dozen places at once and be off somewhere else before they know. And when one of us is caught and put to the question, well, we can't tell them where to find Lord Beric, no matter what they do to us. He hesitated. You know what that means? To be put to question? Arya nodded, tickling, they called it. Poliver and Raff and all. She told them about the village by the God's Eye where she and Gendry had been caught and the questions that the tickler had asked. So
Yeah.
here she is too, in a chapter about prophecy, thinking about that she was tickled and stuff like that. So this is also sort of a big kind of like character development moment chapter for Arya as well.
Yeah, it definitely is. And we see her kind of go through frustration, but like other things as well. And then the realization that other people are hurting by the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, then it goes on a little bit here. No child should be made to suffer like that. Harwin said when she was done talking about it. The mountain lost half his men at the stone mill, we hear. Might be this tickler's floating down the Red Fork even now, with the fish biting at his face. If not, well, it's one more crime they'll answer for. I've heard his lordship say this war began when the hand set him out to bring the king's justice to Gregor Clegane, and that's how he means for it to end. Yeah, he gave her a reassuring pat. You best mount up, my lady.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is
Pretty big.
this is Arya talking about this, thinking about getting justice, and we also, it's crazy because and it's the irony that she doesn't know about what she just heard the ghost of Highheart talk about is going to push her even further down that path.
Yes. And you can kind of start to see Arya's plans of getting to her mother. Like, especially if you look at the prophecy, none of that is going to come to fruition. Like, she's on such a different path, and it's obvious to us now on a reread.
Yeah. You know what else is interesting is looking back at this too, is in the just sort of the poeticness of this here. Um it's kind of crazy, is the fact that it's specifically a faceless man before is described, a man without a face on a bridge
Yeah.
is described before her mother's death, because in a way, as we talked about, she is on she's on the faceless man path already, having met with how am I blanking on his name right now? God, the faceless man, Jack and
Oh,
Jahar.
Jack and Hagar.
Yeah, Jack and Hagar. She met with him, obviously in a Clash of Kings. But interesting too that is the route we see it. That George writes that too in this chapter about Arya. Is
Yeah.
that just a
And
hint? Is that if you're reading for the first time, is that like, oh, he's like, he knows the path she's going? Is that a hint too that he puts that specifically before it?
possibly, I think that that could definitely lend itself to that speculation. Another thing is just the fact that this tells us that the faceless men are involved in world politics and removing kings. I mean, even though it's a kind of a a D tier king, right? In
Mhm.
Balon, the faceless men are moving and being used, and then we end up seeing them also in the Citadel in the next book. And also, they're tied to the doom of Valyria. It's just like little things, little sprinkles, just a little line of a mention of a man with no face.
Yeah. And here we come up too. So right after, think about this, right after they get about that where she's finishing talking about the tickling and he says it's a long day's ride. So then it gets through it. Engai often rode beside her. He was closer to her in age than any of them, but Genry. And he told her droll tales of the Dornish marches. He never fooled her, though. He's not my friend. He's only staying close to watch me, and I'll make sure I don't ride off again. Well, Arya could watch as well. Syrio Forel had taught her how. And this is a theme we've been seeing in Arya and this whole book is every chapter. It feels like we get a little mention of Syrio and then a mention of Jaqen and or like something to do with Faceless Man, and you can see her being pulled, or like, you know, the last one, where is it? Are you Arya? You know, Arya, like her identity is just so like being pulled in many directions in this book.
And the people who have impacted her life the most. I mean, let's remember, she's in a very formative years of her life, and Jack and Hagar and Syrio Forel in some ways saved her life.
Yeah. Right after that too, here, Lady Smallwood welcomed the outlaws kindly enough, though she gave them a tongue lashing for dragging a young girl through the war. She became even more wroth when Lem let it slip that Arya was highborn. Who dressed the poor child in those Bolton rags? She demanded of them. That badge. There's many a man who would hang her in half a heartbeat for wearing a flayed man on her breast. Arya promptly found herself marched upstairs, forced into a tub, and doused with scalding hot water. Lady Smallwood's maidservant scrubbed her, so hard it felt like they were flaying her themselves. They even dumped in some stinky sweet stuff that smelled like flowers. Afterwards, they insisted she dress herself in girly things, brown woolen stockings, and a light linen shift. And over the light green gown was acorns embroidered with all of the bodice and brown thread. Just sort of continues on here as she's, doing all this stuff. Then right after that too, when Arya's like done, talking about needlework, Arya says, well, that's not the way I do it. No, I've always found it so. The gods give each of us our little gifts and talents, and it is meant for us to use them, my aunt always says. Any act can be a prayer if done as well as we are able. Isn't that a lovely thought? Remember that the next time you do your needlework. Do you work at it every day? I did till I lost my needle. My new one's not as good. In times like these, we must all make do the best we can. And then she says, I'm not a lady. She says, now you look like a proper lady. I'm not a lady, Arya wanted to tell her. I'm a wolf. And then she says, I do not know who you are, child, the woman said. And maybe that's for the best.
Dang.
I know. There we go again, too. Then it's like almost like being back in Winterfell, where she's forced to be like a lady. And then, talking about their talents and how everyone can use them. Like, again, that it's still such a big theme in this thing with it, so Arya's like, I'm a wolf. But earlier you're talking about Syrio. And then we had the little hinting of the Faceless Men. And now you're talking about needlework, your kind of needlework.
Yeah, her entire identity is the theme of her character arc.
And that might be the best line. I'm going to have to highlight that because that might be the best line about Arya, period.
It's really
That'll
great.
be I do not know who you are, child, the woman says, and maybe that's for the best. That is like that. You could sum up Arya's entire character arc with that
Maybe
line.
that's the new episode title for this one.
That'll definitely be the episode title for this one. Yeah.
I think that sums it up. And also, this is a patriarchal society, and Arya is not prototypical, which we have seen with Lyanna Stark and some of the other female characters in the book. And I think that this is something that George is not just only doing with Arya, but other main POVs in the series too. Brienne, obviously. And I think George does a pretty good job of going into this. And that's part of the identity crisis in which Arya is faced with.
Yeah. So this chapter kind of continues on a little bit here too. And they talk a little about Thoros, and they talk about his like flaming sword. Arya says, I wish I had a flaming sword. Arya could think of a lot of people she'd like to set on fire.
Fair. Yeah. I can think of a lot of people I'd like to set on fire.
But also, I wish I had a flaming sword. The idea of Lightbringer, right?
Ooh, I like it.
All right. So there you go. It's only a trick, I told you. The wildfire runs on steel. My maester sold Thoros a new sword after every tourney. And then Gendry's there and they're talking. You can still make all the swords if you want, Arya said. You can make them for my brother Rob when we get to River Run. River Run, Gendry put the hammer down and looked at her. You look different now, like a proper little girl. I look like an oak tree with all these stupid acorns. Nice, though, a nice oak tree. He steps close and sniffs her. You even smell nice for a change. You don't, you stink. Arya shoves him back against the anvil and made to run, but Gendry caught her arm. She stuck a foot between his legs and tripped him, but he yanked her down with him, and they rolled across the floor of the smithery. He was very strong, but she was quicker. Every time he tried to hold her, she wiggled free and punched him. Gendry only laughed at the blows, which made her mad. He finally caught both her wrist in on one hand, and it started to tickle her with the other. So Arya slammed her knee between his legs and wrenched free. Both of them covered in dirt, and one sleeve was torn on her stupid acorn dress. I bet I don't look so nice now, she shouted. Then they go back again, just like the word tickle, because she was talking about like the tickler earlier, like being tortured. So Tom is singing, my feather bed is deep and soft, and there I'll lay you down. I'll dress you all in yellow silk, and on your head a crown. For you shall be my lady love, and I shall be your lord. I'll always keep you warm and safe, and guard you with my sword. So, hey, yellow is the color of the stag.
That is true.
A yellow dress for Arya, who could marry into the house of the stag
by marrying Gendry. My God,
Gendry.
I love it, dude. I love it. See, and this is kind of fun to go down, and we know that words matter. Words are not just when George writes them in the books, at least. And
no, every word matters.
Yeah, and this is one of those chapters. It might just be pouring with foreshadowing.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tom starts to sing again a little bit, and how she smiled and how she laughed, the maiden of the tree. She spun away and said to him, "No feather bed for me. I'll wear a gown of golden leaves and bind my hair with grass, but you can't be my forest love, but you can be my forest love, and me your forest lass." And we know anytime a song appears, it has very significant meaning to it.
Yes. Every time there's been a song, I feel like we can go back to it and point out things about it. You know what's weird to me, though? Think about this. There might be something in that we've read. Actually, no. Let me take that back. There's 100% something that we've read, even in this chapter, that George is intending to pay off in books 6 and 7. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah. And so the way the song finishes too, right? She's saying like, I'll wear a gown of golden leaves, but like I'm not, where does it say? Like, no feather bed for me. Arya. Yep. Nope. Not gonna do that.
Yeah.
I mean, are Gendry and Arya gonna get together? Like, I mean, maybe. Do you think they will? Like we saw in season 8. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to go down the same way it did in season 8, but do you think that they will end up like either together?
Yeah, I actually could see it. I could. I think that Arya is going to get a happy ending, mainly because it's George's wife's favorite character, and he promised that he wouldn't do anything too terrible to her. So I feel like that could happen, but who knows? It's really hard to say because Arya is so much younger in the books. Like,
right.
He even had George had a thing where when he kicked out the 5-year grab,
maybe it was, yeah.
Said 13, 14-year-olds might just have to save the world. So be it.
Yeah, because I think originally the plan was Jon and Arya were going to get together.
That was in the original outline.
And like the original
as
outline,
awful as that is.
Well, who knows? I mean, the way it would have been a totally different series.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have loved that. I don't know. She was like 7. Like I don't know.
Right.
I'm out. I'm kind of out. I'm glad he's going away from it.
Gendry's not like 18 though. In like he looks.
No. Yeah, Gendry's fine. Jon Snow and Arya getting together.
And Arya, yes,
I'm out. Yeah. I don't want to see it, and we won't. But
yeah, so Gendry though might not end up being like Lord of Storm's End like he was at the end of the show, because of like somebody like Edric Storm. Like Edric Storm might get that, and so Gendry and Arya might literally go off together anyway.
And I know people didn't like the ending with like what's west of Westeros, but the fact that Nymeria was her wolf and then she is kind of a Nymeria character in this age. I mean, not exactly, but like she has some characteristics of Nymeria from 10,000 Ships. And the idea of a voyage elsewhere and going west is actually kind of cool. I know everyone crapped on it, but I didn't actually have a problem with that ending for Arya.
Arya's ending? No, I think it's probably going to be pretty similar. The only thing I've often thought of would be and that's, by the way, that is sort of the thing. Her dress is ruined, and then Lady Smallwood gives her boy clothes. Yes, child, and so you are. Be brave is what she tells her.
Dang.
Which in a way is sort of like a full circle, again, identity thing for Arya here. Now she's finally in what she feels comfortable in. But the ending I've often thought that would be cool for Arya, and I think I've told you about this before, is I sort of like the idea, and I don't think George is going to do it, of Arya ending up, like, say, marrying Gendry, who does become like Lord of Storm's End or something, and Sansa being the one who gets to like go do whatever she wants. Because because the whole deal is it's like Arya doesn't want to be a lady and Sansa wants to be a lady.
And you flip it.
But you flip it because Sansa's entire arc has been spent being like trying to play the Game of Thrones and at the end she could be like, this is like awful and I want to break free of that. And then Arya kind of does the opposite, where Arya wants to be, not a lady, and she spends her whole life doing it, and then she might at the end be like, maybe I'm ready for something like. And so it only works if they both go in that opposite direction. But I think I'm not saying it's going to happen.
Maybe Gendry ends up on the Iron Throne. I don't know.
Well, he is Robert Baratheon's son, But I think it'd be, and then she's queen. I think it'd be kind of a cool way to do it. Because I would love the idea of Sansa at the end. If she does become queen, maybe she marries young Griff, or who knows, or she does become like a queen of the North, like we saw in the show. But I still kind of like the idea of Sansa being like, yeah, I'm out.
I think that would be an interesting way to take it. Yeah, I think it'd be an interesting way to take it. Here's a hot take. I don't know if Sansa makes it to the end of the series.
You think she's gonna die?
I don't think she's safe.
Oh, I don't know.
I think the show crowds that judgment. I think there's room for her to be terminated.
See, I don't, man. It's hard. It's hard because her arc
is very.
She's like one of the, of all of the characters, actually, of all of like the main POV characters, their arcs in the show does sort of follow like a trajectory of like where the books end to where we project them to go. Like, it makes sense. Sansa's is by far the most different of any of the characters. Her arc is infinitely the most different because all of her big moments in the show are done by completely, totally different characters.
Yes, for sure.
Because we know she's not gonna meet Ramsay. Well, I mean, she could meet him, but the whole Ramsay marrying her and everything, that was totally different character, and the escaping, totally different character. So she's like the wild card.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there would be anyone that would be like drastically different POV wise, and I think that probably, like, actual POV in the book, hers might be the most different. I also think that just all the stuff in the Vale is really interesting, and it was pretty much left out for the most part.
Yeah. So, interesting. Anything else on this chapter, Jimmy?
No, I don't think so. I think that that about wraps up. It's one of those, it's a very important chapter to the story, and it has a lot of meat to it. But it's kind of, you're in and you're out with Arya, and it's about 10 pages, and then look at all the things you get to talk about with it. So it's a good chapter, and I love Ghost of High Heart.
Yeah. So, all right, guys. Well, with that, We want to thank you for playing the Game of Thrones. In our next episode, we will be discussing A Storm of Swords, Daenerys 2. Been a while since we've seen Daenerys, but also kind of a little bit of a mystical chapter going on there.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm looking forward to being back with old Danny over in Essos. If you like our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, like us, write a review, leave us a comment, or send us a raven at btcast@gmail.com or bendthekneepodcast.com.
We'll see you next time. And remember that winter is coming.